Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For many decades now, about 50% of first marriages end in divorce. Second and third marriages statistically are even more likely to end in divorce than first marriages. Divorce is common and is necessary for many people for a variety of reasons. But healing from a divorce, even multiple divorces, can be a hard journey for anybody. Coach Dea is an empowerment, trauma healing, and a marriage coach. So we're really glad to be chatting with her today. She has experience working with women, men, couples, and groups. During today's live, we are going to discuss coming to terms with divorce, what the healing process might look like, finding happiness post-divorce, and much more. I'm going to... Hey, hi, Coach Dana. How are you?
How are you?
Thank you so much for joining us. This is a topic we have not touched on, and it's super important. Tell us a little bit about yourself and like how you became a marriage and a trauma healing coach.
Wow, that's actually a great question. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Jenna. It's such a pleasure to talk about this topic. I think so many people need to hear about healing, about growing after something traumatic, right? So my journey started from a personal perspective. I'm twice divorced. First time I got married, I was really young, and of course, made all the mistakes and learned from it. I was actually a single mom for 10 years in between the two marriages. Then I was later married for 20 more years and a total of 5 children in the process. And honestly, I have no regrets. I think everything in life happens has a learning curve. But then I was married for 20 years and been divorced for 5 years. Now, the reason why I became a marriage and family and divorce women's coach is because it didn't start off as me wanting to be a coach to begin with. I had looked for someone to help me along my journey of healing. And in that process, after I was done with the process of having to purge everything that happened and do my own personal healing, I became very curious about what was my role in my pain. And it's funny because when I mentioned that to some of my friends, they were like shocked. They're like, what do you mean? What was your role in your pain? You didn't do anything wrong. And I thought, well, I'm sure I had some part in it, right? So I was very curious about how had I played a part in that exchange that was the relationship that didn't work. And once I did that, I was able to take accountability for the things that I felt, looking from this angle, right? Looking from this place or putting myself in the other person's shoes. What could have been that I did or didn't do in order to achieve success in my relationship? So then I became interested in taking a course, right? The course was a marriage and family counseling program that was actually powered by the ACC, which is the American Association of Christian Counselors. And because I was a woman of faith, I said, you know what, let me try to find out and investigate what it is that I missed. What did I do wrong? Or didn't I do that I could have done differently? So I took the course in an attempt to find healing for myself, as an attempt to continuation of the coaching that I was already a part of. Of course, I read all the books and watched all the videos, but I wanted something a little bit more scientific. I wanted statistics. I want information from people that had done the work. And many of those people, although most of them were married, had been also divorced. And so what is it that they did to have success in their relationship? And so the journey began. I became interested in that. And so once I was done with the program, I said, this is something that I think so many people should know. There was so much information that I want to pass this on. Now, that was the first part, which was the marriage and family and divorced women's coach. The part of the trauma healing came later. As I started to coach people, what I noticed was that so many people were entering relationships from a place of trauma. They didn't know what had happened to them. So they literally walked into a new relationship. It was like living in a box, going in and out of the same box with different people. They kept making the same mistakes. They kept getting upset about the same things. They kept repeating the same patterns in the way they responded to their partner. And this is why I thought, that's why I got to go into learning about trauma healing, because that's going to help my partners. I will expend in such a way that I'll be able to tap into what it is that is actually the problem, because a lot of times especially in conflict resolution between people. What the problem is not the actual issue, it's just the way they're relating to each other. And a lot of us, a lot of people, and I'm saying us because I've been in that place as well, we do it from a place sometimes of lack. Most of the time, most of the times out of lack, or out of, this happened to me years ago and I know how it's going to turn out, so I'm going to act this way and react, right? And those are the reasons why I did both of those areas. I was very interested in both of those areas.
Wow. Wow, that's really loaded. It's such a beautiful journey. And then also when you're mentioning like trauma healing, I thought this is also because you also call yourself an empowerment coach. So I felt like maybe the trauma healing part is also have to do with the empowerment.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that. Like, what does the empowerment mean to you?
So the empowerment part comes in because I believe, this is what I believe. Well, everybody knows what divorce is, right? It's a dissolution of a marriage or a marital union. And of course, with that comes there's so much that you don't know. In other words, we live an emotional experience, which is the actual divorce. The dissolution is very emotional, is a loss of a dynamics, maybe for some people, loss of family dynamics. For those who don't have children, they might have pets. It may be dissolution of financial means. But nonetheless, no matter what type of divorce it is a difficult thing to go through. But what everybody forgets is that, I believe that as a woman, we probably, I could say the majority of people who get a divorce, particularly women, we probably divorce ourselves long before we divorce our partners. And what that means is that we lose touch with us. We lose ourselves in the what society expects of us, or what our community expects of us, or becoming the perfect mother, or the perfect wife, or have the perfect home, you see? And I believe that we lose ourselves. In that process, there's so much disempowerment. A lot of people walk out of relationships, not actually even knowing who they are anymore. They become someone else. They didn't even like themselves anymore. The person they used to be, their vitality, that joyful, a lot of people lose themselves. So when I thought about becoming an empowerment coach, was the first thing that I thought, let me talk about finding you. If you are happy, whole, and healthy, it doesn't matter if you're single or married or dating, you're happy. And if you don't have someone and you're happy, whole, and healthy, guess what? You're happy, whole, and healthy. So it is one of the things that I think it's probably, if not the most powerful, about healing and about the journey of finding you. Because I believe that when you find yourself, whether you find someone else to share that with or not, you're going to be happy no matter what.
Wow, so true, so true. Do you think that empowerment can be something that comes with a divorce that some people might not expect before going to it?
Well, I mean, ideally, empowerment would be something that would always carry with us. There are a lot of people who are married, who are happily married, and still feel disempowered. You see what I mean? Those are the people that can actually balance between losing themselves. In other words, I have a happy life. I mean, nothing is wrong, but something is missing, right? So they may not have that part of them that feels empowered. Why? Because they immerse themselves in something that they feel is a fair trade-off. So they're okay, they're happy. They have blessings in their lives and everything is good, but they're feeling like something is missing. And then there are people who are not happy at all. Yes, and when they go through the traumatic time, they can override the trauma of the divorce, find healing, and find themselves and find that place of empowerment. And then there are those who never find it. They may be either unhappily married or unhappily divorced. I mean, that happens. Ideally, you'd go from being unhappily married to happily divorced. Happily divorced is a very broad term. I just want to clarify. Of course, not every marriage is the same. Not every divorce is the same. And definitely not everyone feels the same way after they're divorced. I think there are many, many layers to this. Some people can be happily divorced because they found themselves, they reinvented their lives, they found freedom, they found forgiveness. They can actually, it's not that they're going to love their ex-partners, but they can respect them and they can say, yeah, I can. When I finished my course of marriage and family counseling, this is before I even knew I was going to be a coach, I went, wow, no wonder it didn't work. I didn't know all of these things, I was like, wow, really? Wow, no wonder. So you get to that, there are many phases, okay? And I think that it takes time to get to the place. Healing is not a one destination. Healing is a process that takes years, you know, and definitely not easy, okay? And this is what I tell everybody. Healing is about desire, okay? But the desire to heal doesn't happen like people might imagine. Like, oh, you wake up one day, oh, today I just want to heal and grow. It doesn't work that way. For me, the journey of healing began when I woke up one day completely hopeless, and I said those exact words: I just want a different life. Mm-hmm. And so it began, because then I went and did, you know, all my reading. I looked for videos, I looked for help, I hired a coach, and then the journey began. And it was very difficult. It was very difficult to have to be accountable, to have to look at the things that I didn't do or do, to look at, you know, to stop placing blame and take responsibility. It was not easy. It took a lot of courage. And on top of that, the one reason for me in particular that I actually gravitated towards coaching, I think it's different for everyone, but the reason why I gravitated towards coaching is because I'm the type of person that I need to do something. Mm-hmm. I'm an action taker. So for me, it was important to purge. I know that a lot of people prefer to hire someone to help them, and then all they do is talk, share, because they need to get it out. They need to purge. What I did was a little bit of that, but also did journaling. And I wrote a lot about what I was feeling. And then I needed the direction to say, okay, Dad, today I want you to work on this area. This is your exercise. Do this for a week. Okay, next week we're going to work on this. It was very helpful to have someone to guide me through it, even though I got to a point where you're stuck. I don't know how to help you. And then I said, don't you dare leave me. I want to heal. And I was so focused on healing that I said, I'll do whatever it takes. And then you go deeper, you know? So I think it's different for everyone. There's no right or wrong way. I think everyone needs something different at the time that they're going through a divorce, which as a coach is very important to acknowledge, because what needs to happen is, I, as a coach, personally, having gone through it twice, is to understand that no one person is the same. And even though we can have general terms concerning the process of divorce, for example, it's not unfair to say that divorce, a dissolution of a marriage, depending where you live, right? You're going to be under the rule of the laws of that country or that state. Now, that's a general term, but it's fair to say that it's a true term. It's a true statement, because that's how it is. Now, everybody doesn't go through it the same way. Some people can go through the law of that state, of that country, by have an agreement, a settlement, or some type of arrangement that doesn't fall in the categories of what that country says. So just like that, on the emotional side, same thing. People may say, well, you went through a divorce, now you have to co-parent. Well, some people don't co-parent with grace. Some are better than others. Some people don't have children, but they have pets. So they have to divide time. I mean, there's so many settings, you know, it's really so hard to pinpoint and say it's this way or that way. But the most important thing is, I think when someone really truly wants to heal in some way or another, that desire sets forth the intention. For me, it was like, I didn't even know how I was going to do it. I just thought, I just want a different life. But before I knew, a book popped up, and I guess the phones hear us, I guess. It was like I saw a video, then I saw someone on Facebook that said something, then I went looking for that video, or I watched a movie. And then before I knew, I found a coach that was right for me, right? Because there is such thing. And I have heard people say they've gone to marriage counseling, and working with a coach that did not work for them can also be kind of very stressful during that process. So it's very important to research, look at the history of the person you were wanting to work with. That's why I love doing discovery call. When I do a discovery call with a client, I do it because I want them to know how I work, and I also wanted to know how they operate in the relationship. I do a divorce call. I mean, I do a couples call. If they're trying to save their relationship, I do a couples call together. Then I do separate calls as well to know individually, what are their core values? What are their trauma? You know, what is their trauma? Is there anything that happened in the past? So I can piece together, how is the connection? How is that exchange? But also, when I'm working with people that are not in relationships, or maybe they're already divorced, that discovery call allows them to see how I operate. It's so important to feel the connection between you and your client. And I've heard horror stories about couples that start therapy, and they don't resonate. What therapists say to them does not resonate with what the couple is going through. It's not uncommon. Okay, so make sure you do your research.
Amazing, amazing. You work with so many couples. Like, what do you believe are some of the common causes, reasons a couple would go through a divorce?
All right. I think that statistically speaking, and before I even go into that, let me just give you the statistics that are being given. This is not by me. 50% of marriages end up in divorce. If it's a second marriage, from 60 to 75% end up in divorce. And if the couple has either a grieving situation where they lost a child or they have a child with a disability, it increases to 80%. Okay. So speaking of statistics, when it comes to the reason why, we can have couples that are either seeking to divorce or that are going through a divorce or have already lost their relationship, here's the two main reasons. One of them is the style in which they resolve conflict. Okay. That means that people don't fight the same way. Okay. 9 times out of 10, when people fight, by the time they're done fighting, the problem itself is not a problem. The problem is the way they're talking to each other. Are they feeling misunderstood? Are they feeling defensive? Are they aggressive? Do they know how to talk? Do they know how to be humble and apologize? Okay. Which leads me to the second reason. The style in which they apologize. What does that mean? What does it look like? It looks like this. For me, for example, personally speaking, and this could be with anyone, if somebody comes to me and say, okay, fine, I'm sorry, that doesn't feel like an apology. Okay. What it feels like an apology is how I apologize to my children when I do something wrong. It's like this. I'll say, you know what? I'm so sorry that I made you feel this, or I said this, or that. Would you forgive me? Because I feel that when you say, will you forgive me? So just remember, when you hurt someone, that person feels disempowered. When you ask them for forgiveness, what you're saying is, I'm placing this in your hands, and I want you to tell me when you're ready how you feel about it. It's giving them permission to feel what they feel, and then come back and say, here, I accept your apology, or I don't accept your apology, or we can work on it, or it'll take a little time. I mean, I've had conversations with one of my children that she said, I'm not ready to talk, but you know what? I'll keep it open. And when I'm ready, and then when she was ready, she came around and there was forgiveness and love. And I think that it is so important to have that understanding. Now, I'm not saying that is the only way. What I'm saying is find out what your partner's style of apology is. Find out what your partner's style of resolving conflict is. And here's another thing about the styles of resolving conflict. So let me tell you what that looks like. It may look like this. One person needs to talk about it. The other person needs to take a couple of days to process it and share it, right? So what happens is one doesn't want to talk about it. The other one wants to talk about it right now, okay? Possibly the person who wants to talk about might have a bit of an anxious attachment style, and the person who doesn't want to talk about it may be an avoidant attachment style. And what that means is that they have different ways of soothing themselves. One needs another person to reassure them. The other just wants to be left alone, go listen to music or zone out, go in their cave, whatever they do. And this is for both men and women, okay? And then what happens is they can't agree. One of the things that are really important that I say to my clients is making agreements doesn't mean you agree. Making agreements means you agree to disagree. You agree to find a common. So let's say I want to talk about it, but my partner doesn't want to talk about it. So we can say, okay, this time we won't talk. We'll wait a couple of days. And then next time we have an argument, we'll talk because we're taking turns. Or instead of going 3 days without talking and me wanting to talk right now, can we talk in a couple of hours? You see, there is a midway. There is a midway. And the other thing is that resolving conflict is very interesting because, like I said, by the time you're done fighting, you can see this clearly, even if you think back in your life. You're arguing about the way you are arguing. You're not even talking about that you didn't take the trash out or you didn't put there are some other serious reasons, obviously, why people disagree and fight. But what I like to say is this: if you keep in mind that you're not pursuing resolution in the moment, but you need to continuously pursue your partner's heart, okay? And that is having understanding that how does it feel to disagree with someone you love and still love them when it's hardest, okay? It's okay. It's easy to show up when everything is uneventful. You can be loving. You can say, sure, okay, we'll try. But when you're having an argument, it's the hardest thing to do to show up lovingly and stay with that feeling, okay, in a way that it says, okay, let me not take this personally. What does my partner need? Is my partner triggered? And obviously both have to do the same thing, and you have to sometimes do it simultaneously. Obviously, it's not an easy process, okay? It takes practice, but it's definitely attainable, okay? But it takes commitment. These are for couples. It's not for everyone. These are for couples that are ready to get help, that are open to coaching or therapy, depending what style they prefer. Do they prefer just to talk about their problems and let no interference come or opinion or insights? Or are they ready to maybe go to someone? Let's say there is an issue. Some couples that I've seen may have I don't want to say a mental illness, but a mental issue at the time. Maybe they're depressed, or one may have PTSD from a previous relationship. In that case, you go to someone a little bit more specialized, like a psychologist, and they have their way of handling that in a more scientific way. But if these are people that are seeking to grow and evolve, they might look for somebody like me who's a coach, who can give them steps, who can say, okay, this week we're going to try this, or try this when there is, I usually give them 10 steps of resolving conflict, the way to walk through the steps. And we will stage it. A lot of times I stage it. Let's take one problem that you had in the past, and let's see how we can talk about what does it look like to go through the 10 steps with this one issue that you guys disagree on. So it's really, very broad. And I think it really is up to the person, though, how open they are.
That makes so much sense. When people are thinking about different for everyone, and what are some indicators for people that, time is right for divorce?
You know, I have to say divorce is one of those things that there will never be a right time to talk about it or a right time to do it. It feels, having gone through it myself, it always feels like you're pushing against something that is an unknown thing, an unknown territory. And I have to say, even though I was divorced twice, I was divorced in 2 different seasons of my life. Later in life, I knew more, but there was more of a history of time. So it's really never an easy thing. One person might struggle more than another, and all for different reasons, right? We don't know why some people want to stay together out of financial convenience. Some people want to stay together because of the kids. If the kids are too young, they might wait until the kids are older. So I think there are many different reasons. And because divorce is not the same for everyone, I think that's a very broad, there are many, many, many answers to this question, right? The main thing, though, is that if a person comes to the place of understanding what is it that they need for themselves. You see, remember what I said in the beginning. We divorce ourselves long before we divorce our partners. Those are the people that usually have a falling out with themselves. They lose themselves in the relationship. And by the time it's time to get a divorce, they are looking, they are thinking that they need better, that they know better, that they should be better, that they deserve more. However, it's never easy, okay? It's never easy. It's such I feel like it's a dark path for a while until you achieve the place of freedom. And, and if you're lucky, because I know that a lot of people that are not, they go through a divorce, then there is tragedy after. If you're lucky enough to have enough freedom and then both people realize this was the best decision and they can move on to their lives and be cordial and respectful, even though it's never easy to do those things either. Co-parenting is not easy. It can be done with grace, but it takes, again, a lot of humility and work. I think you can achieve that place. It's definitely attainable.
How would you recommend a family, a couple, talk to a child or their children if they are getting a divorce?
Good question. Having gone through this myself, I tell you this is one of the other things that I say never easy. Okay, divorce hurts children. It doesn't matter how cordial you are, how amicable you are. Children will always be affected, especially younger children when they're at that age where they might not be able to understand and process at all. And it's interesting because you think, oh, if they're older, they're going to understand more. They get hurt anyway. But what I'd like to say is this: lead with the truth, always. That's the only gift you can give them, okay? It's the permission to understand. Give them the permission to know that it's done out of something that you in your heart feel is right for you. Because if you live unhappy, I just heard someone say, this is not my line. Someone said, divorce is not the tragedy. A tragedy is teaching your children or showing your children by example all the wrong things about love. And that you don't want. You don't want your daughter or your daughter to learn how to be complacent out of fear, depending on what situation you have. You don't want your son to learn that it's okay to be unfaithful, okay, and come home and be forgiven. You don't want to teach them the wrong things. You want them to see the right things about a relationship. So even though it's not easy, and trust me, your kids are always going to be hurt by divorce. There's no way out of this one. It comes with the territory. But I still believe that the truth prevails. The truth is more important. Is the most important thing to do, is to be honest with yourself enough to give yourself permission to be whole in the moment and to be loving enough with yourself to accept that, hey, it's imperfect. This is a flawed situation, but I'm still going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth. And that's a gift.
So,
give your children.
so true. So true. You mentioned the healing process. And it has many stages. What are those stages that we should be aware of?
Okay. So the first thing that I said, first and foremost, healing begins with desire. Desire doesn't necessarily look like waking up and wishing to be better. Like I said, for me, it was, I just want a different life when I was really in the lowest point of my life. Didn't even know what that looked like. Okay. And pretty soon things started happening. For some people, it might be they just wake up one day and decide they need to get therapy. Maybe a friend suggested, recommended. The stages are, you desire it. Then there are these 4 things that I like to call, it's all under the umbrella of self-care, okay? Because you start paying attention to yourself. It's the process of finding you again. And the 4 stages go like this. Obviously, self-care is number 1, physical. There is physical, there is choice, there is self-preservation, and one that I call tribe. And I'm going to describe all of them. Obviously, physical is, let's say you're going through a divorce. It's not uncommon to see people say, you know what, I'm going to take some time off and spend a weekend somewhere. Or I'm going to go get a massage. I'm going to get a manicure, a pedicure. I'm going to treat myself to a lunch with a girlfriend or a friend. Or if it's a man, men do this too. This is not just for women. I work with men, women, couples, so it's everybody, not just women. It may be a state of prayer or meditation. People like to take yoga classes sometimes, anything to relax. All of those fall under the category of physical self-care. Then you go into self-care as a choice. Here's where you get to decide that you are going to speak with someone. Okay, many in the stage of choice, a lot of things can happen. For me, it started with books, videos, podcasts. I started listening to other people to see what were people saying about relationships in general, right? And then it goes into the stage of hiring a coach like myself, or hiring a therapist or a counselor, depending what your needs are. Okay. But again, remember, research, okay, to make sure it's a good fit for yourself. In many stages of divorce, a lot of people may develop addictions, so they need to address those accordingly as well. Some people may be addicted to eating or not eating or drinking, so you need to make sure you address all of the areas that you need help with, okay, whether it's you or your partner. Those all need to be addressed. Okay, the third one is self-preservation. I love this one because, self-preservation at that stage of a dissolution of a relationship, whether it be a marriage or just a marital arrangement of sorts, is more important than reconciliation. And why is that? It's more important because this is where you get to set boundaries, new boundaries that are healthy, okay? Healthy boundaries. Boundaries where you get to decide what serves you and what no longer serves you. And you become okay with saying no. Because a lot of people, when they are in marriages that are no longer serving them, when they're completely lost and immersed in someone else's lifestyle, they stop saying no. They say yes to everything just to accommodate the style, the family, the community. So this is really important, okay, to set new boundaries. And the last phase of healing for me, which is probably, if not the most important, is tribe. What does tribe mean? Your support system. Okay. One of the things that I want to point out is that one of the dangers of that is make sure that you speak with someone who's equipped to help you. Okay. Your best friend is a good source for some relief, for some venting at times, someone who is not judging you. but is your best friend equipped to help you in the way that you need? Because if not, what happens is even out of love that that person has for you, you start what I call toxic venting. Toxic venting was when you repeatedly say the same thing and you're not going anywhere with it. You're just not complaining, you're venting, but it's just there and you don't move from that place. There is never a point that your friend will say, okay, what are some of the things you can do to move away from that? Or how can I help change the way you're feeling? Can we reframe? Now, obviously, I actually, my best friend and I, we talk a lot about relationships, and we're both coaches, so we can do that with each other. We could say, okay, now that you've vented, let's look at how we can reframe this. How can we just have a new narrative here, or unlearn some of the old patterns and start new ones? Okay. But most people don't talk like that, right? So what I like to say is, most importantly, make sure that the tribe that you're after are people that are equipped to help. Now, some people prefer to go to a healing group, like it could be a healing group, it could be a church group, it could be a Bible study, or it could be just a support group of sorts, depending on what it is you're trying to address. Look for the people that are, the minds are alike, okay? You don't have to be the same, but these are people that do not judge you, okay? They're there to support you and hold you accountable. Holding someone accountable will be harsh at times, okay? Or being held accountable by someone else will be harsh at times, because they'll tell you what you need to hear, okay? It's not uncommon to get in a group of people that, they know they need to point out some things to you when they see that you're going down the wrong path again or repeating old patterns. And in order for you to evolve, here's the element one and most important: emotional humility. That if someone who you asked to hold you accountable comes to you and said, hey, do you think that you might be repeating this? And, you can't get defensive. You say, you know what? You're right. I am. And I'm gonna change that. Be willing to change some things, unlearn some things, and learn new ones. Learn a new language. Learn how to talk about yourself differently. The first time I saw the list of things I needed to say to myself, I had a laugh attack. I was like, oh, and the list was not just about my attributes. The list was actually about the things I deserved. And I laughed. I'm like, I deserve all of this? I was like, this is crazy. I couldn't believe it, And then, but I read it for 30 days out loud. And by the time the 30 days had passed, I said, I may not know how I'm going to get all this, but I know that I deserve it. And when you say you deserve it, watch your whole world change, okay? So be mindful to say the right things about yourself. Change the language that says, and if you can't say it, do what I did. Write it in the mirror. I deserve the best things. I am love. I am beautiful. Start doing it, because, here's what happens. In the process of divorcing ourselves, many of us, particularly women, will stand in front of a mirror and tear ourselves down so hard. So hard. My twin sister used to say, you don't need an enemy. Just stand in front of the mirror. You can do it all by yourself. You tear yourself apart all on your own. It's true. A lot of us do that. So in the process of healing, some things will be required, okay? That you are really committed to watching the way you speak about, especially about yourself. Remember, it's the process of finding you, okay? It's not the process of pleasing others. We're not doing that anymore. We're not pleasing the community, the society, the boss, the friends, the co-workers. We're finding ourselves. And when we do that, everything else falls into place.
So amazing. So amazing and so true. But I also think it makes it really important, as you mentioned, to work with someone who knows what they're doing and how to actually guide you through your healing process. Because a lot of these things you mentioned, I think a lot of people are just not even aware, completely lack of awareness. But I know that I know we're a little bit over. Do you still have a few more minutes?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful, because there's so much great information. I feel like we could have another session. But I also want to I know you also have a podcast, Love Most, the podcast is there. And what do you discuss on your podcast?
The interesting part about it, so I did 2 seasons of my podcast. We're currently on hold. So I had 16 episodes. And Love Most, the podcast with Dea, was a platform that I created out of inclusiveness. I decided that it didn't matter the person's background or what they did, as long as they had a service, a product, or something to share that impacted the world around them in some way. So I started talking with people from all walks of life, from entrepreneurs to, I actually interviewed a multi-award winning Christian filmmaker that had won many awards and had worked actually with Universal and all kinds of companies. And that episode was a live episode. Oh, my podcast was always live. I did it on YouTube, but then I would transcribe into the audio and had a broadcasting service at that time. And I then won an award for that episode. But here's what I wanted to say that was so funny. I was always very aware of time. So I wanted to keep like 35, 40 minutes tops. But he requested that we went a little longer, and we went to an hour and 13 minutes. But I thought it was a great episode. So when I entered for a contest for an award, I thought, well, I know I'm not going to win because I already broke the rule of the time, right? It ended up winning for the best live episode. And it was the 28th annual Communicator Award. And we won an award of excellency, which was the gold. And we were the only podcast in that category. I found out that the other categories, there were many other people that were many other podcasts, either winning as a host or the podcast itself. But for the best live episode, Love Most the Podcast won. And it was literally a year after I had launched the podcast, after surviving COVID, which was another story of my life. So interesting, the chain of events. So the podcast itself, I'm currently not broadcasting any episodes, but I will go back to it. I did use a live broadcast. So what I'm trying to do now is upload the audio of all the 16 episodes and put it into Apple Podcasts coming up maybe in the next 6 months. But it was a great experience. You know, it was just an opportunity to speak with people from all walks of life and give them the opportunity to be a contribution. And even when they came with a specific product or a book or a story, you know, it's amazing how the human experience would always shine through. And I found that people connected with things that people experienced, even along the journey of a very specific purpose. They showed up as people. And that was the beauty of it, was that, you know, I don't want to be exclusive. I want to be inclusive and talk to everyone, regardless of race, color, background, culture. I'm myself born and raised in Brazil. So I came from a whole different background, had to learn how to speak English, you know, very quickly. And, you know, I now speak 3 languages, which I'm very proud of because it did not come easy. But, you know, that I found that speaking with people from different backgrounds even taught me a lot in the process, you know. So we ran for about, I would say about a year and a half. I had 16 episodes. Then I took a pause. So that was a great experience. Thanks for asking about that.
Amazing. We'll be promoting that, and everyone who's watching this needs to hear all your podcasts because it's so interesting. If people want to work with you, how do they get in touch?
The best way to get in touch with me, so I'm here on Instagram a lot, right? So you can either DM me. Oftentimes I will post a post with my phone number, my business phone number. I'm also on Google. So if you were to search Coaching with Dea, you would find my page, and you can leave a voice message on the number. I don't have the number on me at the moment because it's not my phone number, but it's connected to my cell phone. So when somebody calls that number, if it doesn't go directly, I don't answer because I have a client, then it goes through my voicemail and I check and I contact you back. So that's the best way to find me, is to either DM me, or they can also email me at coachingwithdea, Dea spells DEA, at gmail.com and request an appointment.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Dea, and thank you so much for spending extra time. I think we would love to invite you back. I actually prepared like more questions to ask you, but we're like totally over.
Absolutely.
So until next time.
I would be honored, and thank you so much for having me here. And yes, let's do this again. Thank you.
Let's do it. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye. You
Bye.
too. Bye.